Poland is a big financial beneficiary of membership in the EU. Its economy is thriving, and Warsaw is one of the fastest growing metropolitan regions in Europe. The Polish government, now sometimes described as an authoritarian democracy, has had significant differences with the EU. A perspective on the upcoming EU elections now from Poland. Helena Chmielewska-Szlajfer is an assistant professor at Kozminski University and the author of Reshaping Poland's Community After Communism: Ordinary Celebrations. She spoke to us from Warsaw. Poland is sometimes described as having a split personality. On the one hand, a populist, nationalist government, and yet on the other hand, support for the European Union itself is relatively high. How do you explain that?
Well, it's a very pragmatic choice. People, since 2004, since Poland's accession to the EU, have been noticing the huge positive impact of the EU in the country. So one thing are the vast amounts of funding that has been flowing into the country since 2004. Poland is the biggest net beneficiary within the EU of EU funds. And on the other hand, the opening of the market of freedom of movement and of freedom of labor in the entire EU member states has allowed Poles to immigrate to other countries for jobs. So they see that. They see the positive effects in their very daily lives, and that's families all over.
Yet at the same time, the leader of the government and others obviously in Europe too, one of their key concerns heading into this election, one of the key issues is migration.
Yes, but it is a very different type of migration. This is the fear of illegal immigrants who are posing as refugees. This was a huge issue during the 2015 parliamentary elections, and this instilled fear helped the current government significantly to win the elections. As far as I know, Poland accepted 0 refugees among other in comparison to other EU states.
Tell me a bit about Euroscepticism within Poland and what shape that is taking.
It's getting a lot of media attention, but around 90%, it's like 87, 88% Poles claim that they are supporters of the EU, and this has been a very steady number, at least for the last 5 years, and that support has been even growing from around 84 to now 87, 88%. Of course, there are fringe groups, and you can see such fringe groups all around Europe that are Eurosceptic and are claiming that more national sovereignty is necessary. But in the case of Poland, the benefits of the EU are too tangible for too many people on a very daily basis for people to easily reject that in favor of nationalism.
There seems to be an accepted view, even among Eurosceptics across Europe now, that the idea is to reform the European Union from within. What would that look like from Poland's point of view? What would that ideally be?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't think there's honestly any solid idea of how this reform should be done. The kind of basic principle is more national sovereignty, so less EU-centric regulations and more power to the people in particular nation states. But so far, this has not been translating into anything tangible. However, at the same time, one can notice that the EU has been struggling with regulations that have not received a popular mandate in the member states. So there are reasons to be asking questions how this EU regulation should be done to make it acceptable to people within the member states. So this is a big issue that should be discussed. At the same time, Eurosceptics are kind of using this argument to gain votes because arguments of national sovereignty always gain some ground. But it's for now, it seems more of a kind of cynical game for the elections than anything else.
For many, the very idea of the European Union was based on the idea of a liberal democracy. And you've suggested that that is perhaps a dated idea. Tell me what you mean.
Some voices, especially among young people, have been raised that the liberal model is no longer a functional one. And this is also why you can see the kind of illiberal democracy model being implemented quite successfully, unfortunately, in Hungary. Because we are kind of post the end of history, that was the major idea back in the 1990s, the beginning of the 2000s. Now you can see that there are other models of a functioning society that are not liberal democracies. And for people who value freedom, like a very kind of classic idea of freedom, this is a very big threat. But for people who are not really that interested in speaking to power and controlling power because they are more concerned about just leading their lives, this is not such a big issue. So it's this kind of huge debate over how society should look like that has caused liberalism to lose its kind of cool factor. At the same time, the leaders of the EU have done really little to make that idea alive again. The structure of the EU makes its leaders feel very detached from people on the ground. So this is a problem of kind of making the idea of liberalism a valid idea worth fighting for.
Helena, thank you very much for your insight and your perspective on this.
Thank you.